This is Dr. Joel Grassi. What does the renewed space race say about our current dissatisfaction as a race and a society? Does the stewardship and dominion responsibility the Creator gave to mankind include the planets around us? And how do the rest of the 2020s fit into all this? Today we're going to try to answer these questions from the Bible as you and I go walking in the Word.
This is Walking in the Word Radio on AM 570 and 102.3 FM The Mission, WMCA.
Welcome back, everybody, to Walking in the Word. I'm your host, Dr. Joel Grassi, pastor of the Commonwealth Community Baptist Church of the Bronx in New York City. You can reach out to me at 718-839-1000, and you can visit us at our website, www.commonwealthbronx.org. That's commonwealthbronx.org. And in a moment, a telling moment, I think, that was kind of revealing about what an interesting day and age it is that you and I live in. I read the story this past week of NASA and how they had to push back against Kim Kardashian and her insistence that we never went to the moon. And perhaps you've had some familiarity with that conspiracy, if you want to use that word, or that idea that maybe we never actually went to the moon. I've never held to that view. I think why wouldn't we have gone to the moon? And there's nothing in the Bible that makes me believe that we didn't, of course, and scientifically it makes good sense as well. So, but it's amazing how many people, I guess, hold to that viewpoint. And if you want to educate me on that, you know how to reach me. But apparently that viewpoint was shared, and because of the influence that this celebrity has, NASA themselves felt the need to speak to that and answer her and her millions of followers. And it might have something to do with the fact that in 2027, NASA is planning to return to the moon in what will be the first manned landing, or what's called now a crewed landing, CREWED. And this is going to be the first time we've been back to the moon now in over 55 years, more than that even. The last time we went to the moon was the same year that the last time the Jets won a Super Bowl. So it puts both things in perspective. July 20th, 1969. Some of you may remember that. Some of us weren't even around at that point. And there's been 3 other countries since then that have been to the moon. Russia, of course, and China and India. But the United States is still the only country that's ever walked on the moon. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and really just such a historic moment, probably the big moment of the 20th century in many ways. From what I could gather, the cost of going to the moon is in the tens of billions of dollars. And if it cost that back in 1969, I mean, you can only imagine what it would cost today. And that might be the reason why we haven't gone in over 50 years, and how we're finally apparently going to go again here in a year or two. The trip to the moon, from what I can gather, took just over 3 days. And that doesn't sound that long, honestly, for getting to the moon. Now, that'd be a long flight, though. And if you've ever flown anywhere to the other side of the world, being in an airplane for 15, 20 hours is quite the experience. I'm sure many of you can relate to that. But a 3-day trip and to end up on the moon wasn't quite as long as I imagined. I'm glad to hear it was only 3 days. A flight to Mars would take about 7 to 9 months. And can you imagine that, leaving in December and getting there in July or August, something like that? And then just to put this in further perspective, a flight to Jupiter would take between 5 and 6 years. And that's really unthinkable. Can you imagine having left the world, say, back when the COVID-19 virus first came on the scene back in 2019, 2020, and you're just now getting to Jupiter here as we wrap up 2025. What an unbelievable journey. So this puts it all in perspective for us to exactly how difficult space travel is for us as humankind. And it reminded me again of Paul's sermon on Mars Hill. We come back to Acts 17 quite a bit here on Walking in the Word. And we've looked at the first half of this verse in Acts 17:26, where Paul says that God hath made of one blood all nations of men for to dwell on all the face of the earth. And a reminder to us that we all have the same blood. The Bible uses the word blood there. One blood in all mankind here as we share this earth together on the same face of the same earth. But the second half of the verse is what we're going to look at a little bit today, where Paul says that God hath determined the times before appointed and the bounds of their habitation. And of course, the word bounds there, we might use the word boundaries to give the idea or the sense today that the boundaries, exactly how far we can go in one direction or another. This is not something that happenstance or chance or just misfortune has brought to us, but God himself has surrounded us with these bounds, with these boundaries that we are forced to operate within as his creation. The word bounds there in our New Testament, Acts 17:26, is the word orothesia or horothesia, and it's what is known as a hapax legomena in Bible studies. It's the only time that particular word appears anywhere in the Bible. But it's from another Greek word, horion, where we get our words like Orion, which we actually see that come up in the translation of the book of Job, and our word horizon, which is also another way of thinking of a boundary. Or the King James Bible will often translate that word as coasts when speaking of, the boundaries or the borders of a region, when, it'll say that the Lord Jesus came into the coasts of Caesarea or something like that. And it's often asked, are we ever going to land on another planet in our solar system? Are we ever going to escape the bounds, that which keeps all of us here? I mean, when you think about how many billions and billions of people have lived in human history, and only 2 of all mankind has ever made it even to our own moon. That's a very tiny percentage, and so the answer would be 0. It's 2025, and we have exactly 0 people who have made it to another planet. Now, sometimes people will ask one another, what planet are you from? But that's kind of meant, hopefully, in good jest there. But the reality is that, scripturally speaking, the Bible has nothing to say one way or the other about an absolutist restriction against it, or whether it could be possible. We know that we live in this physical world. We know that it's also a very spiritual world. We know that there's a spiritual aspect to our lives, and there's a spiritual warfare going on behind the scenes all the time. And I think man's obsession with getting to another planet, if you will, has gone back to ancient days, the days of mythology, the Dark Ages and the prehistoric ages. And obviously, I think death makes people wonder about that. Death is the ultimate empty nest syndrome. And we look and we say, man, people have gone somewhere. Maybe they've gone up there. And we think in terms of travel, time travel. And the reality is, going in time travel backwards or forwards is something that, so far as science tells us, is never going to be possible. I like those movies probably as much as the next guy. Time travel movies are a lot of fun, but it's nothing that's going to ever happen in our human existence. Some of you may know that Katy Perry went to space along with some other people. I was trying to remember who it was. I don't know if it was Judge Judy or somebody else went with her up there. But when you do a little more research onto it, you see that it was what they call suborbital space. So it wasn't really on the level of where the astronauts have gone or the space station. It's kind of in that lower side of the atmosphere there. And interestingly, she and her crew were there for a grand total of 11 minutes. Isn't that incredible? Here it is 2025, and those who have the means are able to get themselves up into suborbital space for a grand total of 11 minutes. Seems like a lot of trouble for a little bit of payoff, but I guess it's definitely something you can talk to others about. And sometimes people wonder if, what about life on other planets? Maybe if we can't get to them, they'll get to us, And as far as the Bible is concerned about that, the Bible makes it very clear. We've pointed this out many times, that Eve is the mother of all living. And this is actually backed up by certain scientific theories. If you're familiar with the Fermi paradox, this is the idea that our Earth has millions of species of life forms. I mean, think about that. We're discovering new species all the time. You hear about that. A new species is discovered in the ocean or in some jungle somewhere. And yet, with the millions and millions of species on the Earth, our known universe, which is so vast and has so many stars, it's so big that people have actually called it infinite, which it, technically is not infinite, because only God can be infinite, and you can't have two infinite things at the same time. But the reality is, in the known universe, which, according to, science's best answers, has 200 billion trillion stars. That's one number there, 200 billion trillion. And we're told that it's 13.8 billion years old. And so 200 billion trillion stars that have been existing for over 13 billion years, and yet absolutely zero contact has been made with Earth, which has millions and millions of species of life forms on it. That leads us to the conclusion that there is absolutely nobody else out there in the cosmos. We are alone as earthlings. Yes, there's the spiritual realm. Yes, there's the heavenly realm. And yes, there is what the Bible refers to as the lake of fire and eternal judgment. But as far as there being all of these galaxies far, far away where all these other interesting creatures and humanoid-type people are living and operating, and we're waiting for them to kind of land and make themselves known to us, this is not something that we can take any rest in as being factual or true. And even to get to some of these other places, I mentioned that it takes 6 to 7 years to get to Jupiter. And, we watch some of these our favorite science fiction movies, and they just push a button and they go into light speed and they travel across the galaxy in a matter of moments. But if you do a little research on that as well, you find that there's only one thing in existence that can travel the speed of light, and that is light. Unless you're light, you cannot travel the speed of light. You won't survive any kind of travel that way. All of this to say, we can take great comfort as we walk in the Word and consider God's will for our lives, because the Lord is very clear on His interest and His will for us. When you read in the book of Genesis chapter 1 and verse 16, as God is creating the heaven and the earth, and He's separating the waters from the waters and the firmament, and then He sets inside the firmament these two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, We know that's the sun, of course, and the lesser light to rule the night. That's the moon. And then he makes this little statement at the end there. He made the stars also. He made the stars also. And those 5 English words, which are really just 3 Hebrew words, the stars also, and the stars, that is speaking of the 200 billion trillion stars in our known cosmos. To help us get that that's not where the Lord's emphasis is. That's not where God's emphasis is. He is much more interested in you and in this world, so much so that he made mankind in his own image, and he sent his own son. As we celebrate this Christmas season, he sent his own son to come to this world, not to other worlds, not to other galaxies and star systems and whatnot, but he sent his son to this world because this is where God's focus is. This is where his attention is. From the Lord's standpoint, we live in a very geocentric cosmos. The earth is his focus, and he's focused on you. And so we don't have to fret and regret and wish that, maybe one of these billionaires will include us in their new space launch, and can we get a seat, and when will it become commonplace, for us to be able to take an 11-minute suborbital ride way up there in the sky. That's not something that we need to necessarily be focused on. Those stars which declare the glory of God, they show his handiwork, the vastness of this, that God has stretched out from one end of the heaven to the other. This is all designed, I think, to get us to stay humble, to realize that we've been created with boundaries around us. God has set these boundaries, these bounds, these coasts, if you will, that he wants us to stop and kind of back off for a moment and realize, wait a minute, I am a very finite being. I'm very limited in my ability here. I actually need God. I can't even get, to the moon one time in 50 years. I mean, how are we going to go somewhere so far away and settle over there and find life? Is that where our hope and our dreams and our focus and our finances should be directed and spent? I think the Lord has created his world in such a way as to help us realize how small we are and how desperately we need him in all things. I really think that Acts 17:26 verse is drawing on Deuteronomy 32. When Moses there was recording this phrase, he said, when the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. God has divided the face of the nation according to his purposes, his program, and he's set Israel, the land, the promised land of Israel, as the topographical and spiritual and scriptural center of it all. And that's where his interests and focus are. And that's where the region, the area where all of his great actions and activities in human life have taken place originally, including the death, burial, and resurrection of his own son. And it reminds me of the book of Job. And we always come back to that book, don't we, as well? And I think that book is so relevant to us for many reasons. Remember what the first word of the book of Job is in the Hebrew text there? It's such a powerful thing to think about that. You know the story of Job. Here's a man who's living upright, and then all this calamity comes to him, and he's wrestling with the meaning of life, and why do the righteous suffer, and why aren't my prayers answered, and what's the point of doing any of this? The first word of the book of Job is the word man. When we read in our King James Bible, there was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job. The first word is the word Ish. We see that word obviously in Genesis where God makes Ish, and then out from Ish comes Isha, woman. Out from man comes woman. And so the first word of the book of Job is the word man. It's a story of what it's like to be human, to have all this frustration, to have all these limitations, to have expectations shattered, to be frustrated, to be kind of at your end all the time and feel like there's no point in any of it, and have to ultimately take God at his word and live by faith. And it's fascinating to me as we bring this message to a close here on Walking in the Word, that when the book of Job comes to its mighty climax and conclusion there, which really starts in Job 38. You've got this cycle of all these friends asking Job, what did you do to deserve this? And they're kind of reasoning and asking questions. And finally, God has a chance. It's just like in Psalm 12, when you've got all these deceitful words. And then finally the Lord speaks up in Psalm 12 and says, no, now I will speak. And he talks about his word and his preserved words that he's going to keep forever because they're pure words. Well, here in similar fashion in the book of Job, chapter 38, God finally answers Job out of the whirlwind. And he says, who is this that darkeneth counsel by words without knowledge? And he asks Job a series of questions, in fact, 77 questions. Some of you know that probably. In the book of Job, God asks Job 77 questions. And they're designed really to break him down and to humble him and to kind of have him do what he finally does at the very end of the book. He puts his hand to his mouth and he says, I am vile. And I think that's what the Lord is ultimately asking us to consider here. If you can't answer God's questions to you, are you going to still talk back? Am I still going to try to go my own direction, exalt myself, go after my heart's will and desire and in the pride of my life and the things that are all about pleasing me? Or am I going to learn that, I can't answer God one thing, but to close my mouth and say, I'm vile, Lord, and you're righteous, and I'm utterly and ultimately dependent upon you. The Lord asks Job in Job 38:4, where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare if thou hast understanding. That's the first question there directly asked to him. He asks a previous question I just referred to, but where were you, Job? Where were you when I created everything, when I laid the foundation of the earth? Can you give us your eyewitness account of those days? And of course, this is designed to make Job say, boy, I've got nothing to say. And one question after another, the Lord goes to Job there all the way through chapters 38 and into chapter 39. I hope you'll take time to read this. It's such a fascinating bit of interrogation, you might say. But I want to highlight verse 33, where the Lord asks Job, knowest thou the ordinances of heaven? Do you know the laws of heaven? Do you know how it is in heaven? And speaking probably no doubt of the heavens, but ultimately of the eternal heaven. There's a heaven beyond the stars. There's something more to be desired than making it to Mars or Jupiter or another galaxy. And that's to make it to heaven. That's to be in heaven one day. Are you going to be in heaven one day? Are your loved ones going to be there? The Lord Jesus Christ closed his Sermon on the Mount with that admonition that we lay up our treasures in heaven and not on the earth where they can be corrupted. And so I want to encourage each and every one of you listening today as we head into the Christmas season, as we think about this modern day space race and how we're really trapped here on earth, if you will, that there is a beautiful place called heaven. And the Bible says, for whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. And heaven is promised to those who will trust Christ as their Savior. Have you done that? Have you believed on the Lord? I pray that you have. My name is Dr. Joel Grassi. I'm the pastor of the Commonwealth Community Baptist Church of the Bronx. You can reach me at 718-839-1000 or visit my website, commonwealthbronx.org. And I want to thank each and every one of you for spending this time with me today, walking in the Word.
You've been listening to Dr. Joel Grassi and Walking in the Word Radio, a ministry of Commonwealth Community Baptist Church of the Bronx, New York City. Call our church at 718-839-1000 or visit our website at www.commonwealthbronx.org.